Hello and welcome. Yesterday I talked about the BBC programme Panorama and how they had been caught lying, allegedly, because they apparently doctored a video to make it seem as if Donald Trump had said one thing when indeed he hadn't. And this just before a US presidential election. So it will be interesting to see how things pan out for the BBC. But that then got me thinking about, well, who can you trust? What should we be looking for? And as a reminder, let's look here, because you may recall this particular story about Peter Mandelson and the debacle around him being appointed as the US ambassador. Well, he wasn't interviewed, according to the BBC, if we can believe them. But I suspect he wasn't interviewed because we have an interesting collection of individuals, do we not, who seem to just drift along the corridors of power, knowing each other, connected in many ways to each other. So what is going on? What I think you might find interesting, well, essentially, these are snippets from two interviews. One is with Liz Truss, who you will know well if you're in the UK, and you will also know the second interviewee, Suella Braverman. Let's have a listen to a couple of snippets from them.
Not a Democrat. You're not a Democrat. You believe in unelected technocracy. It's a position, it's a point of view, but it's not democracy.
I just think
no one voted for Andrew Bailey. I mean, by the way, he's not even a competent technocrat. He's an incompetent technocrat. But even if there were competent technocrats, the fact is, no one elected them. And if you just allow me to expand on this point.
Go on.
These are people, broadly speaking, the senior people in the Treasury, the senior people in the Bank of England. They believe in net zero.
Okay.
They believe in mass migration. They believe in Keynesian economics. They believe in high tax and high spend. Mm-hmm. They were responsible for printing vast amounts of money after the financial crisis during COVID that has inflated asset prices and made it very difficult for young people to get on in life. So they have a worldview. They're not neutral technocrats. Yeah. They have a worldview. And we can see this worldview emerge from time to time. So Bailey has recently criticised Brexit. He has promoted net zero. Mark Carney, who is the ultimate version of these people, made lots of money out of the whole climate change agenda, or what Donald Trump would call the climate change scam. He then went on to be Prime Minister of Canada and is busy ruining Canada's economy at the moment.
What I wanted to home in on was that she's essentially saying that there is this deep state. She's essentially saying that the Prime Minister and people in the public eye are not, or anything like, as powerful as people, the population, you and I, may initially suspect. And part of that conversation, which is a long one, and I recommend that you have a listen to the full-length interview, was around the fact that, and it was touched on there, that technocrats seem to get put into these positions, but they're not elected. And the interviewer's counter-argument was, well, wouldn't you want people who knew what they were doing? And that's a fair argument. However, again, we get a taste of it there from Liz Truss. Her counter to the counter was that, yeah, but they have agendas. That's a fair point because, we've heard in the past, the recent past, about trusting the science and trust the experts. And I think by and large, that's a good idea. Let's get an expert in. But if they have a particularly entrenched ideology, that's going to skew the thinking. It's going to skew what they tell us and how they approach decision-making, in fact, how they approach research. So I think she has a very good point. But Liz also, at least as far as the interviews that I've seen, talks more and more and more about it essentially being the civil servants, that they were the biggest issue that she had. And I hope I'm not shortchanging her in terms of what she means when she talks about that stuff. And I think that can be part of it, but I don't think it is all. And in fact, you need the civil servants, you need the mechanism to essentially iron out some of the perturbations that can occur when new people like ministers drop in on the scene and say, just do that. They know the mechanisms, they know the procedures. Yes, that can mean that there is a turgid environment. It can mean that things get delayed when they shouldn't. So I'm not saying it's all perfect, but I think to say, oh, they're all bad is naive in the extreme. And also, I suspect that while some of them may be part of some of the problems that we see around us when things don't get done and we get frustrated with the people that we've voted in, sometimes not voted in, we can still get frustrated with them. I think there are other forces at work. There are other agendas at play, like, Mandelson there. How come he wasn't interviewed? Who is this guy? Why is he creeping around in the background? Anyway, and we hear about Davos, we hear about the World Economic Forum, the NGOs, the quangos. What is going on there? Let's now listen to Suella Braverman, and she has a slightly different take on things. She does think that some of the civil servants can be obstacles to change, but she doesn't put the bulk of the blame on them. So let's keep in mind what Liz has said, because I think that's part of the problem, but let's also then listen to Suella, because I think you may find this interesting.
Some measures which would then have a benefit and a tangible benefit that we could feel quite quickly in terms of bringing the numbers down. And then when you do have to go back to the electorate at the next election, you might have failed on the votes, but you will be able to tell the British people, when I had the power, I managed to bring down immigration. Now, give me more powers, give me a mandate to do the same with legal migration. You would have something to demonstrate to the British people that you could be trusted on immigration. Yeah. So there was a political incentive for the previous Conservative Prime Ministers to do something on legal migration, because it would have given us something, some results to actually, evidence to the electorate. As it turned out, because my efforts were blocked and rebuffed and I was outnumbered in the cabinet, we went back to the electorate with unprecedented levels of net migration. And all trust has been broken with the British people. We can't be trusted at the moment on immigration because we made promises for the best part of 10 years. We roundly broke them, and people see that as a betrayal.
Very interesting. Another interview I recommend that you have a look at and a listen to, the full-length version. Suella Braverman certainly there comes across as someone who is normal in the sense that she's not quite the caricature that she has been painted as in the past. And I remember reading some of the headlines about her and thinking, who on earth is this person? Now, doesn't mean to say I agree with everything that she says, but she seems coherent enough and balanced enough for me to want to listen to her if I was interviewing her, because she comes across as, I would describe it as three-dimensional, not just a sort of plastic politician. Now, maybe Liz Truss and Suella Braverman are both recognising what most of us can see in Keir Starmer, this facade, this mechanoid, this machine who uses management speak that doesn't mean anything and frustrates the heck out of all of us, and it doesn't seem to stand for anything as values shift and drift according to the weather. Now, the other thing there at the end, Suella Braverman mentions trust, and trust has gone. Absolutely, but it's also gone, one could argue, to a greater degree with Labour. It has been destroyed. It has been vanquished. Can it ever be, well, let's reconstituted, revivified? Not in the short term, and I don't think it should be, which is something I want to come on to. Other things she's talking about, of course, is immigration. And she's saying that this was blocked essentially by colleagues, people in government, not as much the civil servants. So what the heck is going on? what is this deep state? What does it consist of? And I don't think it will be any one thing, more like a hydra. And the connection, I suspect, is ideology. The connection is that somehow, somewhere, there are a group of people, again in NGOs, again in societies, who share similar-ish designs on the planet, on us, who seem to be at odds with what most people want. And I know we're all a little bit different, and the devil's in the detail and all that sort of stuff, but as Suella Braverman says, you essentially, without borders, and this is again part of the longer interview, without borders, you don't have a serious country. She's absolutely right. It is insane, but we're being told otherwise. There's this propaganda approach that, no, migration, it's great. Without it, you won't have an economy. Is that true? It's impossible to do something about these boats. Is that true? Well, we're tied up in red tape. Yeah, could you do something about it? It goes on and on and on. And I just get frustrated about us being played for fools. So, to finish today's little video off, what do we do then? I've mentioned already yesterday, I think as well, critical thinking, and to look at individuals and situations slightly cynically, which is a darn shame, but I think we're in that zone. I think we have to really dial down the emotions in terms of whoever is in the running to be in charge of the UK and other countries as well, of course, because what happened with the Tories? Everybody was so beleaguered with them, they thought, well, Labour can't be worse. Let's give them a chance. Other people thought, I don't trust these people. I don't trust Keir Starmer. I have a bad feeling about it, but nothing we can do. They're going to get in because of the Tories. And who else is there anyway? We've got to be careful that we don't find ourselves in that situation now, because again, we're beleaguered, we're dissatisfied, we're annoyed with Labour, we don't trust them. Keir Starmer's uninspiring, to say the least. And so who do we grab onto? Is it Farage? Is it Rupert Lowe? Is it someone else? Is it Kemi Badenoch, who can perhaps re-energise the Tories? Possibly not. But whoever it is, they will say in part things that we agree with. Our job is to understand whether they're saying those things to get into those positions of power. So a couple of little markers that I've talked about over the years in terms of teams and business. Look at the history of them. Have they been consistent? Have there been any major ideological changes? If so, because that can happen, why? What is the collateral people damage that they've left behind? Are the signals coming out from these individuals over time through their history that would cause us to go, oh, maybe they're not all that they seem? Do they just shift with the breeze? Are they ideologically weak in that sense? Are their values malleable? Is their belief system like gossamer in the wind or in a hurricane? What, again, have they stood for in the past? And then also, they have to be held to account. We have to be able to question them. We have to be able to say, how are you going to do that? And as they go along in a lead up to any voting procedure, like an election, we have to get in detail what they mean when they say, I will do this. By when? How? Now, things may morph and change, of course, but we must go into this with our eyes open. And what I've said, I've given some talks about leadership over the years, and one of the things that I tell people is this, and I'll share it with you here. Don't deify anyone unless they're a deity. And there's not many of those around. It is really dangerous for any of us to put any of these people who would like to be our Lord and Master on a pedestal. We can like them, we can agree with them, not necessarily 100%, but do not raise them above other people, because they are there to serve. They are not above. They are perhaps shoulder to shoulder.